Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Hello, I'm Dr. Cynthia Tulin-Wilson, the Title IX Coordinator for Holy Apostles. I'm available to address any concerns you wish to bring to me concerning sexual assault, stalking, and intimate partner violence. We hope this series of webinars is helpful to generating awareness about this issue throughout our school community, both on campus and online.
Welcome to this production, co-sponsored by WCAT Radio and Holy Apostles College and Seminary, concerning the state of Connecticut's PA 1411, which is a policy dealing with sexual assault, stalking, and intimate partner violence. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, there is on the Holy Apostles website the first webinar that was conducted back in October. There is a link to its content, and you can listen to it in audio format, or you can download the printed version of it. And that talk in October dealt with what is the nature of PA 1411, what is it that we're being called to do in response to sexual assault, stalking, or intimate partner violence in our community. So those of you who've read PA 1411, and I mentioned this in the first talk that was given back on October 25th, and in the podcast, those of you who've read that law will notice one very interesting aspect of it. It's a law that deals with activities concerning sexual assault, stalking, and intimate partner violence on campus. So it's an act concerning on-campus instances of these things. Holy Apostles has a campus that is much broader than simply the campus community itself at 33 Prospect Hill in Cromwell, Connecticut. We have a campus that has many students that are distributed, who are distributed around the world. And so we have students in Asmara, Eritrea, and in the other dioceses in the country of Eritrea. There are 55 students there, over 30 of whom have already graduated with their Master of Arts degrees in pastoral studies, in philosophy, and in theology. We have students in Tanzania, East Africa, in the Archdiocese of Tabora. We have students in Singapore and in Vietnam and in Australia. The sun literally does not set on Holy Apostles because of our distributed community. So when PA 1411 says these things that occur on campus, I consider the on-campus world to be something much broader than 33 Prospect Hill, Cromwell, Connecticut. I consider that campus to constitute members of our community around the world. So it's an application of a local state law that reflects a federal imperative onto a global setting. So that's what we're dealing with. In terms of the community itself, in the fall of 2018, there reside, and I mentioned this in the first webinar, 50 seminarians studying for the Catholic priesthood in the college and major seminary programs, many of whom are international. In fact, most of whom are from places outside of this country, which brings with it an incredible number of cultural nuances that require Americans in New England, that require us to have an understanding of the other cultures with whom we are dealing, and for us to teach those other cultures who we are in middle Connecticut, in central Connecticut, and in the United States, in terms of American culture. So last year's series of webinars and work we did on intercultural competencies is key, because it's very difficult for us to learn every other culture and very difficult for us to teach every other culture our culture. But if we can understand and relate to others through the use of intercultural competencies, then we know that we're better prepared for missionary work, which is the mission of Holy Apostles, to cultivate missionary disciples for the purposes of evangelization, and to have our missionary disciples whom we've cultivated enter into the real work of evangelization within their own communities. So 50 seminarians and 42 religious sisters, many of whom, or most of whom, are from the country of Vietnam, 22 priests in the Master of Arts programs, 29 commuter students, 10 of whom are women, attend the on-campus courses, 463 students, 179 of whom are women, attend the online programs. So if you add all those students up, we're just shy of 600 students in a distributed community. On campus, we have the 50, the 42, the 22, which is 104, 114, and the 29 commuter students, which is 143. Those persons who are studying with us, coupled with our staff, who are themselves distributed. We have one staff member living in Florida, one staff member living in Missouri, one staff member living in Louisiana, and our faculty, who are distributed all over this country in the United States, from California on the West Coast all the way to all of the states on the East Coast. So with over 80 adjunct faculty who teach online, we pretty much hit every state except Hawaii, and I'm waiting for a Hawaiian faculty member to join our faculty simply for the purposes of my going out and visiting. So that's our community. So the application of this series of webinars is more broadly placed in terms of the Holy Apostles community than PA 1411 requires, in terms of its being an on-campus kind of community engagement that it's pursuing. So this means something to us in real terms. If we count online or distributed students in a sexual harassment or sexual conduct and grievance policy, then what we're saying is those people who engage our community from a distance have the same rights and responsibilities as those people who engage our program at home or on the campus in Cromwell, Connecticut. Now that's key for what it is that I'm about to propose and to lay out for you. In the year 2013, in response to updates that were being made on the diocesan level and the Diocese of Norwich, in which is housed, or in which resides the campus, in which is located the campus of Holy Apostles, the Diocese of Norwich promulgated a few policies of its own. And before I get to our sexual conduct and grievance policy, which you may find on our website at holyapostles.edu/sexual conduct and grievance policy, there's hyphens, but if you put in holyapostles.edu sexual conduct, it'll pop up in Google. If you will, take a look at 3 documents. One is entitled Diocese of Norwich Electronic Communications, Internet, and Computer Use Policy. The second is entitled Diocese of Norwich Pastoral Code of Conduct. And the third is entitled Diocese of Norwich sexual misconduct policy. All three of these policies affect what it is that we do in administrative policy in putting together the document Sexual Conduct and Grievance Policy for Holy Apostles. Now, this policy is 5 years old. It was made in 2013. We're in 2018. We are at the point where we should review and renew the policy simply for the purpose of updating it. But we're still going to use the documents from the Diocese of Norwich, which help establish for us a normative kind of standard within the diocese, in terms of what the schools, the institutes, the organizations, the agencies that are within the umbrella of the Diocese of Norwich, in terms of what these entities would themselves be held responsible by the Diocese of Norwich. So in terms of the sexual misconduct policy itself, this was promulgated on January 28th, 2013 by the Most Reverend Michael Cody, and it includes within it some general provisions, some roles and responsibility, some processes, some definitions, and so on. And so I'm scrolling down from the top of it. It's a very useful read in the sense that it's a direct hit on what the Diocese of Norwich considers to be sexual misconduct. Now, pair this with what the state of Connecticut considers to be sexual assault, stalking, and intimate partner violence, and you've got a sense of the recipe for the kind of policy that Holy Apostles itself has to have. And Holy Apostles, of course, would also be inclusive of the accreditation requirements, in terms of ensuring the ethical human treatment of all persons involved in the school or within the academic community, or even more broadly within the community of practice. That includes more than just the academics, but also includes the kinds of activities that schools do in terms of human, spiritual, and pastoral formation. The kind of activities that schools do extracurricularly and municipally and regionally as they interact within the local context, broadening themselves out into the global context. So in that sense, Holy Apostles, because we are Catholic, understands ourselves already within a global network of over 1 billion Catholics, within a Christian network that's over 2 billion strong, and within a human network that's pushing 8 billion, on planet Earth. So the policies are useful for us to kind of get a sense of how we ought to respond to particular requirements, specifically in terms of the state of Connecticut's PA 1411, and in terms of the Diocese of Norwich's own conduct policies, and in terms of any federal or accrediting requirements, but also because we understand ourselves as Catholics engaging in a world of persons whom each of us has the opportunity, through grace, for salvation, and the entire world that wholly hope of eternal and joyful communion with our Creator. We don't necessarily have to restrict ourselves to the base requirements of any given policy. An example being my extending the Connecticut PA 1411 policy, which really talks about on-campus communities, to the entire world that wholly. In short, it's the right thing to do, to treat others in an ethical and humane way, as we understand in our Catholic tradition, through natural law and through divine revelation, in both its scriptural and oral forms, as interpreted to us through the magisterium. So all of the the teachings that have come down for the past 2,000 years on how to engage others ethically come into play, which is important for us to understand in the year 2018, when there is so much strife in the church and in society outside of the church being by nature a countercultural phenomenon to the secular world, but also as frail as its leaders who may sometimes embrace that world in inappropriate ways. So what we want to do is live as we were designed to live, and that is why at Holy Apostles that design starts here with Ground Zero at 33 Prospect Hill Road, Cromwell, Connecticut, with the help of the Diocese of Norwich that has provided in these documents some very helpful documents. So you've got the Diocese of Norwich Sexual Misconduct Policy, you've got the Diocese of Norwich Pastoral Code of Conduct, and you've got the Diocese of Norwich Electronic Communications, Internet, and Computer Use Policy. So if you look at these documents, you'll see that there are structured instructions on how we ought to interact with one another in our face-to-face communities and in our online communities. So these policies, in addition to State of Connecticut's PA 1411, went into forming the Holy Apostles' Sexual Conduct and Grievance Policy. So that's where I'll begin now. So we begin our policy by defining harassment, and then by becoming more focused in defining sexual harassment. So before we even get to the procedures for seminary personnel, we lay out these definitions and kind of explain what we want people not to do. So harassment encompasses a broad range of physical, written, or verbal behaviors, including, without limitation, the following: physical or mental abuse, racial insults, derogatory ethnic slurs, and display of offensive materials. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. These are a few of the things that our policy defines as instances of harassment. So if you find that you occasionally engage in these kinds of activities, knock it off. And if you find that you are the receiving end of these kinds of activities, engage through the process of subsidiarity in an appropriate grievance method. So, for instance, tell the person who's engaging in these activities with you to knock it off, to stop. And if that person doesn't stop, then go to the next level. And that next level, in terms of sexual assault or stalking or intimate partner violence, is the Title IX coordinator at Holy Apostles. Holy Apostles Title IX coordinator is Dr. Cynthia Toulon. She is the academic dean for online learning and is also our registrar. So those of you who are members of this community already know her and have likely interacted with her on a number of occasions, either to process work if you're a member of the administration or staff, or to engage as students in the life of the academic community, or for other reasons. So this is why Dr. Toulon makes an excellent choice to serve in this role as Title IX coordinator. She is central to pretty much everything we do and is key to the effective administration and organization of the institution. In terms of stalking, many of these things I just mentioned that define or provide examples of harassment would fall under stalking. So stalking doesn't even have to be sexual. Stalking can be simply somebody engaging in physical or mental abuse, as the state of Connecticut defines it, by pursuing, engaging inappropriately, texting, any number of different things that I mentioned in my last webinar. Somebody else, to the point where the other person is fearful for his or her livelihood, and even for his or her life. So sexual harassment itself has a number of different definitions, and the state of Connecticut defines it in various ways on its penal code list that I posted in the October webinar. So I won't repeat all of the different ways that sexual assault can occur, but sexual harassment is a form of sexual assault. It is defined as any unwelcome sexual advances or request for special favors or any conduct of a sexual nature when submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term condition of an individual's employment. Submission to a rejection of such conduct by an individual is used as the basis for employment decisions affecting such individual, or such conduct has the purpose or effect of substantially interfering with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Now, if you note, these definitions deal with work environment. So one of the things we want to do as we review this policy is expand that out and include study environment. So, for instance, that very first definition or example of submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term of condition of an individual's employment could also be a term of condition of an individual's success in a given course. So notice that it's a power relationship, in which case we have defined sexual harassment, where one power says to somebody who doesn't have that power, if you want the goods, benefits, or services that the power I have provides, then you must succumb to my will in X, Y, and Z ways. So that would be an example of sexual harassment. I would say we broaden that example not simply to power relationships, but to horizontal relationships, not just to the vertical ones where one person has real power over another person, and that in and of itself is a conversation point. Sexual assault can be something that where colleagues are working together or classmates are studying together, and one pursues another in an unwanted and unwelcome way. So our policy continues. Administrators, faculty, staff, and volunteers must avoid developing inappropriate sexual relationships with seminarians and other members of the community. Okay, well that almost goes without saying, except we have to say it. Inappropriate behaviors include, but are not limited to, the following: unwelcome sexual advances, suggestive or lewd remarks, unwanted hugs, touches, or kisses, requests for sexual favors, retaliation for complaining about sexual harassment, derogatory or pornographic posters, cartoon, or drawings, sexual advances or touching, sexual comments, pictures, or sexual jokes, requests for sexual favors used as a condition of employment or to affect other personnel decisions such as promotion or compensation. And of course we would add courses, in terms of faculty and students, and in terms of students and students. So these would be the kinds of behaviors that we would deem inappropriate. And if you notice, they span the range of sexual assault. So, for instance, unwanted hugs, touches, or kisses, through stalking, which could be any of these: unwelcome sexual advances, sexual comments, pictures of sexual jokes, suggestive or lewd remarks, through intimate partner violence. Now, intimate partner violence is an interesting thing in a seminary environment where most of the students studying on campus don't have intimate partners. Our intimate partner is Jesus Christ himself. But on occasion, because we do have students who are lay students, they may have persons that they are dating, and the persons that they are dating or persons they marry may engage in violence against one another. And my personal opinion is don't do that. But if it is happening, then, and if you're a member of our community, then we want you to know there are resources that can help you. Now, our resources are rather parochially based in the person of Dr. Toolin, who's on campus in Cromwell, Connecticut, but also in the Catholic Charities in the office that Tracy Martone runs that handles issues such as these. So there are two places to go, and it's quite likely that the place to which anybody would be referred would be the Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Norwich. But for those among our distributed community, there are offices similar to Tracy's all over the country, of the number of other things. There are so many resources and services that are available online these days as well, that these may also be made available to members of our community who are suffering from intimate partner violence. So places they can go in order to seek redress or assistance or help or any of the number of other things that these organizations may be able to provide, one of which is counseling. The policy includes what to do if you are on the receiving end of this. Allegations of sexual misconduct are taken seriously and are to be reported to Dr. Cynthia Toolin Wilson, Title IX Coordinator. Her email address is ctoolin, that's C as in Cynthia, Toolin, T as in Tom, OOLIN as in Nancy, at holyapostles.edu. Her phone number is 860-632-3022. Now, the Diocese of Norwich does itself have an internal affairs office. That number is 1-800-624-7407 or 1-860, if you're local, 889-4455. If a minor is involved, our policy reads, the norms of the sexual misconduct policy and the Code of Pastoral Conduct Policies of the Diocese of Norwich are to be followed without exception in every situation of this kind in order to protect the rights of all involved. So we do have processes, at least the policy that Holy Apostles has developed 5 years ago, and the policies that were developed in the Diocese of Norwich 5 years ago, provide us with some methods, some means by which to engage. And these are internal methods that we put together ourselves, but that have teeth in the external world in the form of the state of Connecticut's laws and its penal code explanations, and in the form of what it is the federal government has provided us, and in the form of what it is the accrediting bodies have provided us, but importantly, in the form of the moral teaching of Jesus Christ himself. So procedures for seminary personnel is the next section, and it talks about reporting sexual misconduct or harassment. So all seminary personnel, and this includes administrators like me, employees, students, or volunteers, are mandated reporters of sexual misconduct or harassment if we witness the incident or are told of the incident by the victim. And the person to whom we are going to report, and the person to whom we would counsel the victim to report, is Dr. Cynthia Toolin, because as Title IX Coordinator, her role is to coordinate. And after an initial conversation, she may escalate the concern to the rector or to the vice-rector, and then, if necessary, to the diocese, to Catholic Charities, to the support center within the diocese, to wherever it is, and to the civil authorities, to wherever it is that the information has to go, so that the person receives the appropriate assistance as outlined by Connecticut Law, PA 1411, and our policies. So in the very first webinar I gave in October, I talked about the PA 1411 and what it mandates. And here we're talking about what we do and how we can make this better. So the procedures for victims or third parties reporting an allegation are provided here on the conduct policy or the grievance policy. To report an allegation of criminal or illegal sexual misconduct toward an adult or toward a minor under the age of 18, we do certain things. So toward the adult is we call the Cromwell Police Department, Cynthia Toulon, the Diocese of Norwich Internal Affairs Office. So there's 3 places that receive this report. And then if a minor, we call the DCF hotline, Dr. Toulon, and the Diocese of Norwich Office of Internal Affairs. So you can see the allegation or the complaint is treated at the level at which it would be normatively treated, both in ecclesiastical circles and in civil circles. So finally, to report an allegation of sexual misconduct that is not illegal, this PA 1411 pretty much makes everything illegal. I mean, sexual assault, stalking, and intimate partner violence pretty much covers the gambit. But if it's not illegal, according to the penal code, so you're not, it doesn't break a criminal statute, then there is a procedure to call Dr. Cynthia Toulon and then call the Diocese of Norwich Office of Internal Affairs. And the numbers are provided. So you can see how central Dr. Toulon's role is as our Title IX coordinator. So the ways in which this is made known by the person who is the victim, the complaint should be put in writing, outlining the alleged offense, including as much detail as possible in naming those who might corroborate the incident. The person making the complaint does not have to confront the alleged offender, but will understand that his/her name and the nature of the complaint will be revealed to the alleged offender in the course of due process. So eventually, the alleged offender will have to know by whom he or she is being accused, but the person who is the victim does not have to immediately confront that offender. And ultimately, it would come out in a civil or a criminal court anyway, if it reaches that level of grievance in the pursuit of due process. At any time in the process, the complainant or the alleged offender has the right to appeal to the civil authorities, and that's the reason we give the numbers to the Cromwell Police Department and to the DCF hotline. Note that in terms of our distributed community, the police department is not going to be the Cromwell Department of Police. It will be a local municipal office, and we would say that number is probably in your iPhone somewhere. So if nothing else, 911 works in the United States. Whatever works in other countries ought to be pursued as well. But the resources that the school provides are very useful and should be used in terms of whenever something like this occurs, because you are a member of the Holy Apostles community. If it's occurring out of some other context, then it is important and it should be addressed. And you are welcome to contact our Title IX coordinator. But if it doesn't have anything to do with the Holy Apostles community, even in its distributed form, then you want to find the organization or the institution in which it is contextualized and go through the grievance policy for that organization or institution. In any case, do not be afraid to contact civil authorities if you feel civil authorities are warranted in the discussion, because it's very important for the truth to come to light in a public way if that truth is something that is best dealt with in a public light. So sometimes things are best dealt with simply with a stern look. We've accomplished the goals of this webinar, which is to explain the existence of the Diocese of Norwich documents, their codes of conduct, to outline or to explain the existence of the Holy Apostles' sexual conduct and grievance policy, to outline the policy for you, and then to ask you to assist us in the revision of the policy in light of PA 1411 and in light of the things that you may find in the diocesan documents that were not originally considered within the sexual conduct and grievance policy as currently written. We look forward to seeing you again in a few weeks. In mid-December or so, we'll do episode 3, and we'll be talking about a more particular instance of Connecticut State Law PA 1411.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.